Royal Navy personnel could also be called on for action duties on shore as well, so they form landing parties, and they would wear these tall webbing anklets and the bell-bottom trousers. They would always have 7 horizontal creases in them. You could just about make some out there, and that was so that they could be folded up and stored in a very small space and not get any more creases in them, because on the ship they were very short of space. These are the anklets or gaiters. This is the bottom of the boot here. There's a piece of string there, and it's just made into 3 loops. They go inside each other, and the last loop goes through that top strap there. And on the inside, you look there, they're made by the Mills Equipment Company, made in 1923, so they were made in between the 2 wars. This sailor is armed with a Lanchester submachine gun. After Dunkirk, the British found that they had no submachine guns at all, so this was developed. It was based on the German MP-28, and it had a 50-round magazine, and it could fire 600 rounds a minute, and these were made from 1941 to 1943. And they were mostly used by the Royal Navy. The RAF did have some as well to guard the airfields, but they were very heavy and cumbersome, so they weren't very good popular really. And the Royal Navy only stopped using these in 1970, and after the Second World War lots of these were sold to other countries around the world as well. Because the magazines were so long, they had to have these special webbing pouches made, and the pouch on the left hand side of the picture, that's got another little pouch attached to it. That's for a loading tool. They had to have a special loading tool to load up the magazines, and these some of these pouches were later on, they were cut down to accommodate the magazines for the stem machine guns. And now on the caps, on the cap tally would normally be the name of the ship, but during the war all the sailors just had HMS, so that, you know, if anybody got captured they wouldn't know who, you know, which ship they were on or where they were for, where the ships were at that time. Now, the Lanchester, that was also made to accommodate the 1907 pattern Enfield bayonet, like the used on the SMLE rifles from the First World War. Although the Lanchester was a very reliable rifle, it was a bit complicated and took a long time to make, so they did try and simplify it a bit. Like the wooden buttstock, that's just the same as on the SMLE rifles, but like I say, it did take quite a long time to make and very expensive, so it just wasn't time to make them, really. This is a sailor on guard duty on shore. He's issued with the 1908 pattern webbing equipment and the SMLE rifle from the First World War. And some of the operations that the landing parties were involved in was in Norway in 1940. They did some joint operations with the army there. And another main one was in the First World War. The Naval Brigade were sent to Belgium in 1914. These are soldiers marching off to Antwerp to stop the Germans, so they were used quite a lot at the beginning of the First World War. And I'm sure most of you will have heard and seen the Royal Navy field gun competition. That's where 2 teams, they race with a gun and a carriage over a course, and they have to dismantle it, take over obstacles, reassemble it again, and fire some shots. Well, that came from the Second Boer War, when for the relief of Ladysmith in 1899, a Royal Navy landing party were put ashore, and they had to carry, there was two 4.7-inch guns and four 12-pounder naval guns, and the first part of the journey was by train, and then but the last part, it had to be manhandled over rough terrain by the men of the Naval Brigade. So that's how the competition came into being. The competition started in 1907 and went on to 1999. They don't do that anymore in the Royal Navy. By 1939, with war looming, the British Army realised they weren't going to have enough of the new 37 pattern webbing equipment. So at the time, there were still loads of leather making companies in England, so they decided they're going to make a set in leather, exactly the same. All the pouches, the straps and everything was going to be exactly the same, but made of leather. And it became known as the 1939 pattern. But it was mostly used just for training, and then later on in the war it was used for the issued to the Home Guard. And I think after the war, I think I lost quite a few of these sets of equipment were sold to Holland for their army. In between the wars, the British Army had discontinued their two-piece entrenching tool, but with war looming again, they decided to make some straight handle ones like the Germans, but they didn't last very long. I think they did see a bit of service in France in 1940 when the British Army went out there, but they soon converted back to the two-piece entrenching tool, and they would still be issued with the SMLE rifle. So you got your 1907 bayonet and the water canteen, that's in a crate. But like I say, it's the same as the webbing equipment. Everything is made of leather. This is the British made straight handle entrenching tools, just like the Germans, but this one's got the British markings on. You can make that out there. There's the broad arrow stamp there and made in 1940, but it's just the same as the German ones. Some other new equipment that came out at the beginning of the war was this. It was came out. It's called the 1940 Cavalry pattern. It was for the cavalry. I mean, cavalry wasn't going to be used much, but it's a brand new set of equipment. You know, it's cotton webbing. It's got 3 pouches on either side, and then some other bits and pieces on the back. As you can see by this strap there, it's made by the Mills Equipment Company, 1940. And that thin strap there, that's for the equipment at the back. It comes over the top, and there's a brass piece there, and it loops onto that lug there, the special brass buckle there with a lug on it. And that's for the hooking equipment on the back. Then round the back they have a small backpack. It's the same size as the infantry had, but it's the fittings are different. This is not an original 1940 cavalry pattern one. They're very difficult to find, but so this is just an ordinary infantry one. It's the same size but with different fittings. And then the water bottle, that's in a special cradle just for the cavalry. Now, how the canteen and the backpack are attached, there's that thin strap I showed you that goes over from the front, and then there's another one, that thin strap there, that's attached to the ammunition pouches, and that comes across and attaches to the other side of the canteen, and the backpack's the same. Now, the belt and the ammunition pouch are in three different sections. These each pouch is separate, and there's a little short piece there. That's hooked, they are connected to that, and that's made by the Mills Equipment Company, dated 1940. That piece there in the middle there, that's quite rare, that. And on the other side, you can see, you probably see a better view, that's where the three sections are, and then there's some special clips there for the back, and there's those little thin straps fastened to the ammunition pouches, fastened to the equipment at the back. Now these pouches, where is that now? There it is. That's dated 1941, so by 1941 they were still making those, but I can't imagine that any of those were ever used. I've been looking, but I can't find any photographs from the war with cavalry wearing this equipment, so I don't know how or when that was ever used.